Hey friends, I'm Scott Hanselman. I work in Portland, Oregon. I've been remote the entire time I've been at Microsoft. So I'm not, while everyone else is remote because they have to be, I've been remote for the last 13 years. And Portland is about 15, I don't know how many kilometers it is. It's about a 4-hour drive from Seattle, but I haven't been back to Seattle since about January. I usually go up every month. I drive 4 hours up to Seattle to hang out at Microsoft, and now I'm still remote. So it doesn't quite feel the same as being remote before, because being remote before was kind of a freeing thing to be able to work from my house. But now it's just sad because everything sucks here in the U.S.
Cool. It's a worldwide thing, so yeah. Cool. Can you tell us about your developer journey, how you started and how you reached where you are now?
Excuse me. I started when someone that I was a teacher of mine allowed me to have access to a computer. I'm not a little older than you all. I'm a lot older than you all. And before, everyone couldn't afford just have a computer or an Android phone or something in their pocket. So an Apple II computer in the 80s was, many, many, many thousands of dollars. So one person could never own a computer. Instead, the school that you would go to would own one computer for the whole school, or they would own one computer for one class. And I went to school at a place that had just one computer, and they would let me use it on weekends. Basically, I could sneak in and use these computers, and they looked like this. And that being able to use that when I think I was 12 or 13, got me started. And it was cool because the teacher had given me like access to this computer on the weekends where I could sneak into school. And I assume it was because they thought I had some ability or some talent that they saw in me. And I think that gave me a little bit of a jump start. And that's really important because I think it speaks to early access to computers. Getting access to a computer of any kind is like the most important thing you can do to someone. And additionally, by allowing me to do that, they kind of sponsored me. And I think that it's important to point out the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. A mentor can offer you suggestions and point you in a certain direction and suggest that you do this or that. But a sponsor really opens doors up, and they talk about you in a positive way when you're not around, and they make things happen. You know what I'm saying? So they don't just provide you mentorship, they provide you sponsorship.
Yeah. So how did you manage to get into Microsoft and reach where you are today?
I started at Microsoft when I was already 17 years into my career as a programmer. So I saw Scott Guthrie at an event, and I bumped into him. It was like a camping event, and he just was chatting with me. Scott Guthrie is the president of Azure, and he was just simply like saying hi, and we were chatting, and he said I should apply. So the process, I don't know if this is interesting or not, because this is kind of weird. I can't see anybody, and I'm just talking to myself in my office here. You and I, Bethany. I guess people can't turn their cameras on. I'm not sure, but let's see how I started. I went to a thing called community college. This is not like a fancy university. In the U.S., we have like 4-year university, but this was too expensive. I couldn't do that. So I went to what's called a 2-year community college, and I went to Portland Community College. This is like a technical university. It's quite, hey, Clinton, look, he's backing me up with the camera on. Thank you, sir. So a 2-year community college is like a technical school. It's inexpensive. And I lived in my parents' garage. And I was thinking about a computer science degree, but instead I got a software engineering degree. And the difference is that computer science, in my opinion, is kind of abstract, while software engineering is like more practical or applied. Like computer science has classes like data structures, which is important, but software engineering had classes like unit testing. And it was a 2-year degree, and I lived in my parents' garage, and I came out with what's called an associate's, right, which is half a bachelor's, half an undergraduate degree. Bachelor. I don't know how to spell bachelor's. So you can see I didn't do very well because I didn't even know how to spell that degree. So we'll just say half a BS. This is like after, I don't know, how, do you have 2-year degrees that side? Like after you do Form 4 and you go to college,
Yeah.
you do 2-year and then a 4-year?
No. For us, you can, when you finish high school, you go to either college or university. So in college, you can either do a certificate or a diploma. A diploma is now like what you're talking about, 2 years.
Okay, so this is like a diploma.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was in 1992, and I graduated that in 1994. Then I went back to school in 2003. It took me 11 years to get this degree, this 4-year degree. I was going at night. And so I had been working for 11 years. And I felt like I needed to finish anyway. So I went to school at night to what's called a state school. It's like a public school, because I couldn't afford to go to like a fancy school with a name. So I went to just one in Oregon here. So a lot of this experience of going to school is just grinding. You know, we call it grinding. Just trying to turn the crank, do the work. It was not fun. It was a lot of really bad work. But I was worried that, you know, people would look at me not having a degree and make me feel bad about myself. I think this last degree was not necessary, because I feel like once you have about 5 years experience, then people care less. So I noticed that when I was getting my first job, they always asked me about this first degree. But when I went back and got this degree, I'd been working almost, you know, more than 10 years. No one has ever asked me about my degree ever since. So that first 5 years is really hard, because everyone is going to question you, and you have a young face, and where did you go to school, blah, blah, blah. So really having a list of projects that you work on and things became more important. Actually, I think I might even have my resume online. I haven't looked at my resume in 10 years. Let's see. Hey. Oh, this is so old. Oh my God. Okay, this is my old resume. I honestly haven't looked at this. I need to update this. Oh my God. Actually, if I update this, they might think I want to quit. So maybe I shouldn't update this. What do you got here? Oh, this is a little funny trick that I did. I made a tiny company for my side stuff. So, you know, when you work on like little stuff on the side, or you fix someone's website, those things should go on your resume, you know? So I was doing just little small things with little local companies. So I made my own little company, and it was just me. So apparently it says I've been doing it since 1989. So I wanted to put work that I did on my resume and make it look like I worked somewhere. So I did that. When I went and got this first degree, let me put these things in Catholic. When I got the first degree, the little one, they had an internship. And internships are super cool. I think they paid me $5 an hour. And I worked in Visual Basic. And I made applications for building cars. That was here. So I would go to school, I would work for them 9 to 5 p.m. And then I would go to school 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And I did that for a couple of years. And then I did that, actually, I did that for 2 years. And then I found a consulting company that would hire me, and I spent looks like 6 or 7 years there doing a bunch of different stuff and everything, This is another important thing. You notice, look at the languages: C++, Java, Visual Basic, oh my God, Pocket PC, SQL. This is just all kinds of random work. You basically do whatever work you can without worrying about the language. So when I was in school, they were teaching me C++ and C. But when I took the internship, just take anything you can get, because it doesn't matter if it's in Java or if it's in whatever. I like to say, this is just a thing I say, that a for loop is a for loop, and you just got to figure out how to do it in that other language. It's kind of like learning a language, a talking language, right? Like there's always a word for the sky and water and hot and give me some food. You just got to figure out what it is. So that's why I put linguistics at the bottom. I'm always trying to learn different languages. So there are going to be words and things in different languages that are unique, but for the most part, we're all humans and we all have a certain way of thinking. So computer science and the basics of computer science goes a long way. So if you're going to go and work for somewhere in Java and you only know C#, you can say, oh, I realize that this is a Java job. I only know C#, but the two languages are so familiar to me and they're very similar. And, I understand object-oriented programming. I understand the base of the pyramid, the base problem. So I use that a lot of times to push through people who didn't believe me. Then I went back to school to teach. I actually went back to that college and they let me teach classes. So I taught C# and web services. Oh my goodness, I taught XML. There was actually a class on XML. Yeah, that's a thing you don't want to, I want to forget that now. Then I became kind of worked my way up. Like this is the part, you just grind, right? You just build on top of all the different stuff. Each one of these bullet points, this might look like a lot, but it's not really. This is just old. I'm just really old. Each of these is a project, right? So a thing that I did. This is a television channel. This is a business. This was like an Amazon.com website. This is a library. They're like 6-month projects. If you don't have 6 months projects to work on, remember that these things were just stuff I did on the side. So you can make a website for your church, and then that can be a bullet. You can make your blog, and that can be a bullet. So if someone is filling out a resume or trying to decide what they do, it's like if you are new, you start with education and then experience, and experience is usually projects, and then other skills. And I always think languages, both human and computer. Human languages are always good. If you speak 3 or 4 languages, tell people. And then when you get older, when you're 5 years in, you can start moving education down and moving experience up. And then if you've done anything in open source, you can put those as projects as well. And open source can be, literally anything on your GitHub. anything that you've done, website for schools, church, whatever, like anything you make should be on your list, and even side projects. Like I made a robot with my like a Raspberry Pi, and it's like a stupid little, it's a Raspberry Pi on wheels, I should put that on my resume probably because it was cool. All right, I'm talking too much, Bethany. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Oh, the other question was, you've been working remotely like for how many years?
13 now.
I think it's 13. Wow, for 13 years. For us, we just shifted the other day. So like, what advice can you give us on remote? Because I have calls on weird hours, I have all these things, and yeah.
So I wrote a blog post called "Quarantine Work is Not Remote Work."
Yeah.
Are you working remotely because you want to or because you have to?
I have to.
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
Yeah, I have to.
So remote work is a joy. Remote work means you can stay at your parents' house and work and see your family all the time and go for a walk when you want to. But quarantine work is like you're now on prison. You're like in a home lockdown and you have to stay there because I said so. I wrote this blog post because I wanted people to understand that, like, this is the thing I wrote here. I've been doing computers for many years and I've never really felt burned out, but working like this made me feel burned out. And the reason is we forget who we are. Let me unshare my screen for a second. We forget who we are when we work from home because there's no boundary between where you work and where you live. If you're in your living room where you eat and you see your family and you watch television and you work, where's the separation, right? How do you separate who I am at home with who I am at work? Especially if you have a small space. So you have to come up with like mental tricks to make your workspace seem different from your home space. Sometimes the first thing you do is you get your computer or your laptop and you sit on your bed where you sleep, or you sit on your living room couch, and then you put the thing away, and now you're still on your bed. And are you expected to sleep? You've been there all day. Or you're in your living room and you put the laptop down and now you're supposed to talk to your family. What can you do with your space, like a transformer from the movie Transformers, to make it? Can you turn a chair a different direction? Can you face the window to get some sun? There's sun out there. It's killing. It's like, what is this ball of fire in the sky? Oh my God. What can you do to change your area so that psychologically work feels different from life, if that makes sense? But again, these are little tricks. I think people need to net. I call it nesting, and I wrote a blog post about this too. Nesting, like when you're a bird and you're making a nest. What's nesting is, it's like making a space for yourself, like a bird makes a nest for the family. It's about being intentional and deliberate. Ask yourself where you're sitting and why you're sitting there. Is it the only place you can sit? Is it the most comfortable? You don't need to move somewhere else. You don't need to find a new place to sit if this place you're sitting now makes you happy. But does your back hurt? Do you have good light? Should you open the curtains? Can you try sitting somewhere else? Maybe the kitchen table or the counter, maybe the floor, maybe on the porch, out in the front of the house. As long as wherever you're sitting and doing your work is is feeding your spirit, then even something small like turning in a different direction can give you new perspective. That sounds silly, but like I've been facing this direction because for me it works. But when I get confused or I get frustrated, I'll open the window and I'll just turn and I'll go in a whole different place. And it's like, I don't look over here usually. Like this is all different stuff, a different wall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I really believe in what's called deliberate practice. When you do something, you need to do it for a reason. Now, you may find that you have the perfect little place to work already. But little small changes, putting something on your desk that makes you smile, like a toy, like I have like my toys on my desk, like my little action figure guys, you know, those little things make you feel like you have your space, your own personal space. And then I take it away when I'm eating and then I put it back when I'm working. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Then in relation to that, how have you been coping, or like you said remote and quarantine work is not the same. I mean, working remotely now is not the same as working remotely probably last year. So how do you like cope with what's happening outside and you focusing on what's at hand?
Have you ever heard the term, how do you boil a frog?
And
No. So if you take a frog and you throw it into a hot pot, a boiling pot, the frog will jump out of the pot because it's too hot. So what you do is you put the frog in the pot and you raise the temperature very slowly so the frog does not notice the heat until it's too late. So what happens to us is we're in a pot that is slowly raising the temperature. And the pot is quarantine work. It's going to start to stress you out. You're going to start having headaches. And you're like, I don't know, this is not tech. This sucks. Like everything about this sucks. I don't know why, until you snap and you get angry at your family, or you punch a wall, or you start to hurt, or your stomach is bad. And you're like, why am I sick? What is going on? Because the stress of the quarantine work is getting to you, just like the water is getting really hot for the frog. The opposite of that would be if everything was great and you have a job somewhere else, or you love your school, and then in one day you go to quarantine work. You're like, this sucks. Why would I do this? This is horrible. They're throwing me into a hot pot. The reason that I think that thinking about the frog like that is important is you can catch yourself earlier. And you can say, this didn't work. Today, this Thursday, this Friday, whatever, isn't working. Why? And then you have to take an inventory of yourself. Why did this not work? Did I not drink water today? Have I not seen the sun in some time? Why am I feeling this way? We never make appointments with ourselves to do this stuff. And I'll even be so bold, if I may, Bethany, to say sometimes Africans aren't given permission to look at themselves and say, why am I not feeling good today? My wife is from Zimbabwe. She just keeps working. So her answer to feeling bad is working harder. And I think it's important to give yourself permission to say, hang on, I'm going to spend a few minutes and I'm going to sit here and I'm going to take an inventory. Are my shoulders tight? Am I hurting? Is my light good? Did I eat today? You can't work yourself out of those feelings. And sometimes you should give yourself permission to take a walk. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's a little bit cultural. Americans are a little bit too worried about themselves. And sometimes Africans are a little bit too worried about everybody else. So I think somewhere in the middle is the sweet spot.
Oh, cool. So if you have any questions, you can raise your hand. There's a question if you have any question, you can raise your hand. There's a question from the chat by Ruheni, is asking, how do you balance creating all this content with work, and you also have a family, and probably you have so much more. Considering like in your Scott Hansel minutes, you have 740 plus podcasts. So how do you like create all these things while still doing all these other awesome things?
So the trick is to try to be consistent and remember that this is a marathon, not a sprint. You know? And if we look at my blog, like here's 2020.
Yeah.
You can see I pretty consistently blog on Tuesday and Thursday. Right? You don't see any blogs here where I'm blogging every single day, right? It's pretty consistently Tuesday and Thursday. Because if I told you that the answer was blog every day, that would feel unsustainable. It would feel impossibly hard. True. But if you blog twice a week, it doesn't sound super hard. And if you did that for 1 year, you have 100 blogs. But you could also just change it and say, I'll blog once a week on Wednesdays. And that's 52 blogs a year. So remembering that if this was a sprint, I could blog every morning and every night and after lunch, 7 days a week. Like no one's going to do that. That's stupid. You have to set up what I call success systems that will allow you to succeed. If you pile on work, you're going to fail. It's like when they say you should work out. Like, when am I going to work out? Yeah, you should work out every day. You should work out 30 minutes every day. It's not going to happen. So work out once a week, twice a week, go for a walk, do small things. The Hanselman podcast that you mentioned, that show has been going on now for 740 episodes, which sounds like a lot, but it's just once a week. It's every Thursday. I get to talk to someone interesting for a half an hour. So like Bethany, you organize this and you're talking to me right now. You're recording it. Like you're already close to making a podcast. You know what I mean? Like you just got to show up once a week. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And all you just don't stop. The world is littered with blogs and podcasts that got started and then stopped. The trick is not to stop. And the way you don't stop is by not going too fast from the start. I'll use another metaphor because there's so many Kenyans on, like the marathon, right? Kenyan runners pick a good pace. They don't say, I'm going to run as fast as I can for 26 miles. No, that's insane. No one can do that. You pick a good starting pace and you think about your body and you breathe and you go and you start at a good pace. Start blogging once a month. Do a little open source once a month. So the idea isn't that I have more time in my day. The idea is that I think about the hours that I use. I always hear people on Twitter talk about Netflix or this show or that show. And, I watched 17 episodes of Big Brother or something. And I'm like, you could have watched 16 episodes and written a blog post. How did you find so much time to watch TV or movies? Just pick one movie or one TV show, don't watch it, and do a little open source, do a little learning or whatever. So it's about being intentional. You don't notice that you're watching too much TV, or I watched this football game, and it only took 4 hours, right? Well, cool. Maybe watch 3 hours of the game and then do something for an hour, intentionally.
Yeah. Is there anyone with any question before I continue?
It's a pretty quiet crowd here. We've got 24 people, my friends.
Yeah, we need some energy in here.
You're kind of killing me, kids.
Seems like there's no one with any question.
Well, here's a question then. Here's a question. I see Collins has a question, but I also want to know, does any of this sound like useful or reasonable? Or is any of this, BS? Is this like stupid? You're like, Hanselman, you're full of crap.
No, it's very reasonable.
Very reasonable? Okay, that's good. Let's see what Colin says.
Let's hear. Yeah.
You have to unmute yourself, sir.
Hello, everyone. I do have a question, and for me as a developer, I don't feel like I feel like everyone is moving towards wanting to get employed, but for me, I feel like developing my own stuff. And the problem with that is I'll probably end up not having any capital to really make it a good startup. And if I get to work for someone, I'll probably end up forgetting myself. How do you really choose what you really want if everyone is going towards one direction, but you don't want to get employed? I want just to develop my things and make it and earn my living through that.
Yeah.
That's
It depends on the jobs that you can potentially find. For example, in the US here, if you can find a job that is not in tech, that can pay the rent and enable you to do your thing. For example, my brother in the US here, being a firefighter is very common because all of the buildings are made of wood. So my brother's a firefighter, but this is not his passion. He doesn't care. I mean, he likes being a firefighter, but that's not the point. The point is he can go to work, he does his job, and then he can turn his brain off. There's no firefighting once he's left work. He's done. So when I hear people who want to do startups on the side, but they're worried about capital, they work a main job that's the keep the lights on job, and then they turn their brain off. But it has to be a job that doesn't leak into your regular life. So I wonder, like, if you went to work somewhere, then you'd have to context switch. You'd have to switch between writing code for the man versus writing code for yourself. And inevitably, those things are going to mix. I wonder if there's a way for you to have a job that is totally unrelated to your startup that would give you the mental compartment, the mental space to keep the two things separate. Or find a company that would allow you to work on your side gig and keep your intellectual property. You have to be careful when you're working on software. Sometimes the company will say that anything you work on, they own. So be really careful with that. Like at Microsoft, if I work on stuff on a Microsoft laptop, they could say that they own it. And I don't want them to do that, you know?
okay. Thank you. That is really helpful.
Yeah, there's someone from the chat who's saying that what you're saying is like super useful. So yeah. Then there's another question from Joshua. He's asking, how do you develop the discipline to learn and continue creating content, and like just the discipline to do what you do?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. Let me see if I can find something to show you online. Here it is. I know, I'm sharing, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Do you guys know who Jerry Seinfeld is? You ever watch the show? He's like a famous TV show guy in the US. There's a show called Seinfeld. He's one of our most famous TV guys. And he's been around forever. And he has a famous thing called Don't Break the Chain. Because he's a comedian, he goes and he writes jokes. And he wants to write jokes every day. So he does this thing called Don't Break the Chain. And Don't Break the Chain is he takes a calendar and he puts it on the wall. And he does the thing he wants to do, and then he puts an X on the calendar. And once he's done that a couple of times, he feels really bad if he breaks the chain of X's. So one of the things you can think about is, are you doing the thing you need to do to move forward in your life? You are studying, or you are writing a little bit of code. Like, what's your goal? What's a thing that you can do that you could check out an X on the calendar? Could it be, I wrote a little JavaScript today, or I worked on my book, or like Collins, I did the little startup work. It's kind of like the 10,000 steps. Everyone wants to get their 10,000 steps or whatever, like, what did I do today that moved me towards my goal? Once you have a chain that's bigger than 2 weeks on your calendar, you're going to do everything you can to not break the chain. So for Seinfeld, this comedian, he writes a new joke every day. So I try to think about something on my blog or my podcast every single day because I don't want to break the chain. And then once you've gone for like a year, I mean, imagine how cool it would be to have a calendar that looked like that. That doesn't need to be an hour or 10 hours. It could just be a couple of minutes. But did you do a thing today to move your goal forward? So consider how you can make a success habit. And again, it doesn't have to be big. It just has to be like tracked.
Cool. Then there's this question. When you're building a web API, does the framework you're using or the language really matter, or just having the product out there?
That's a good question. Does it matter to you, right? Like, what is the goal? The great thing about web APIs is that they use HTTP and they can be consumed by anything. So if you write it in JavaScript or you write it in C# or whatever, it ultimately doesn't really matter because the people who consume it, the client, doesn't really care. So this is a really important thing. You're going to go out in the world as new developers, and you're going to meet people that are going to have different religions than you. And you're going to say, yeah, I do my work in C#. And they're going to be like, C#? Oh, that sucks. C# sucks. .NET sucks. It's for old people. Only really cool people do Node. And then you're going to go through your life, and then someone else is going to be like, Node? Oh my God. Only posers use Node. Ruby is the one true language. Okay? Now, imagine that whole interaction, except swap out Ruby and Node and C# for Christianity and Islam and whatever religion, right? I don't care what religion you are. Are you happy? Are you hurting anybody? Then enjoy your religion. So whatever religion allows you to make a web API successfully, that's a good thing. Twitter is written in Ruby. GitHub is written in Ruby. No, Twitter's written mostly in Node. GitHub's written in Ruby. Xbox is written in .NET. Stack Overflow is written in .NET. They all seem to be doing pretty well. So who am I to tell them that their religion is stupid?
Yeah. Then there's another question on JavaScript. What is your take? Is it, wait, let me look for the question again. Yeah. Would you bet in the next few years JavaScript will still be there, considering JavaScript is this dynamic language that today you'll have a new framework, the next day there's a new library, or would you bet on something like Flutter or Blazor for the web?
JavaScript isn't going anywhere, period. JavaScript is fundamental like HTML in the web. But I do think that in the next couple of years, there will be a separation between JavaScript, the language, and JavaScript, the platform, the thing you can write on top of. So if you think about driving a car, JavaScript by itself is a manual shift car. And then running a library on top of JavaScript is like an automatic shift car. And something like Blazor could be like an Uber or a Taxify or something. So it still has to shift the engine and do stuff. It's just whether or not you care. So I think being aware of JavaScript is important, but I think that there are layers of abstraction that will hide that from you, right? If you get into a Combi or an ET, there's a car, it's got to have oil, someone's got to drive it. There's all these different things about that car that need to be managed and maintained. But that's the driver's job, not yours, right? So a layer of abstraction on top of JavaScript is just like a driver who's taking you from point A to point B, and they're just hiding the complexity. But someone will have to understand it. So I think it's useful if the minibus breaks down, I'd like to be the person on the bus who knows how to change a tire. If you don't know how to change a tire, if you don't know JavaScript, then when the thing breaks in Blazor, you're going to be just sitting there waiting for them to fix the car. Does that make sense? You don't need to be a mechanic, but I mean, a little basic oil change and change a tire is helpful. Hope my analogies work. I'm trying to make them universal, international analogies.
Yeah, they actually work. So this is just a basic wait. Is there anyone else who has a question first before I continue? There's a hand raised, but you lowered it down. Glorious, do you still have a question? Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, hi. My question was already answered kind of when you were talking, but I'll just ask it either way. So I saw you presenting your CV and it actually looks so good. And
Oh my
then
God, it was.
I had,
Thank you.
yeah, it actually does. So I've been going through something for a while and I haven't really talked about it. But so what happens when, let's say maybe you apply for a job and then you get it, and then it happens that you work for like 2 months, and then after you work, they realize that you don't have your leaving certificate, and then that becomes a problem. How do you deal with that without like brushing off with the company that hired you?
When you say they realized you didn't have a certificate, was that a mistake, or did you lie, or did they lie? Like, how
I
do
did
they?
not lie. That is the thing. I did not lie from the start. I literally told them that I'm not finished with school, but I was scheduled to finish like in a month. But then Corona happened for everyone, so I didn't finish in a
Oh
month.
wow,
Yeah. So how
that
do you
sucks.
deal with that?
Gosh, it sounds like you're doing the right thing, and you're probably stuck in a system that is not ready for, that was not prepared for things to be changed. You know, like in America we say shit happens. You can see what's happening to us right now. In this case here, you were a month out, you were almost done, you were totally honest from the start, and then some shit happened, and their system is very rigid, inflexible, and they're not set up to be prepared for someone to like not have that yet. Are you going to finish it in a month, or are they pushing back and saying that you don't get to finish it all?
No, they're actually okay with the work I've been doing. The problem comes in with the finance sector, where they now think that simply because I do not have my papers from school, I don't deserve the salary that was initially supposed to be given to me in the contract. So I'm supposed to finish in 9 months, and that still stands, but they just want me to cut down the salary until I get the papers to them.
Yeah, that's a complicated and sticky thing. I don't have a good answer. I don't know. I'd be interested if Bethany and others have an answer on how to fix that, because every company is different and every culture is different, you know, and how I would manage that in the US would be different than if I managed it in Kenya or in South Africa. I wish I had a better answer for you. It sounds like you're doing the right stuff, though.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And then the last
Sorry,
question.
I don't have a secret answer.
The last question. So have you ever gotten to a point where you feel like people are confusing what you're doing with what they think you're doing? Like, for example, I'm a UI UX designer, and then a lot of times when I post my designs, people think that I'm doing coding, and they tend to come to me with coding questions a lot. And then when I don't meet the expectations, but because seriously I don't do Android, they get a bit disappointed. So where do you like draw the line and make them realize that this is what you're doing and this is not what you're doing? How do you make that clear without coming off like you literally don't know how to code? Because I can't code, I simply don't like Android, and I don't want to do it for now.
I'm trying to see a time. It's hard because when you're starting in your career and someone comes and asks you a question, you want to have the answer. But if they're coming at you like, hey, tell me about brain surgery, and you're like, I am a foot doctor, I have no idea about, like, I'm a doctor, like I know about doctor stuff, but mostly the feet, not the brain. It seems like trying to make it as separate as possible, like technical, doctor, feet, not the brain. Loving your question, wish I could help. My specialty is over here. You know what I mean? Like, you need to make it as separate as that. What you need to be careful on is this technical or non-technical. Don't let them imply that you're not technical. Don't maybe say that you're not a coder. You just say, oh, I'm sorry, that's not my specialty. My specialty is this. You're asking me a question about that. Maybe you could talk to one of these other people whose specialty that is. Does this happen a lot?
Yeah, it does happen a lot. I actually stopped posting my designs on Twitter and those other social sites. I only use like Dribble and places where other designers are, because I
Yeah,
felt
where the
like
designers hang out. Yeah.
people don't get what I'm doing. And then sometimes when beginners come and then I told them, hey, I don't do this, I do this, they get more confused because somehow they can't separate that. And I feel like
I think that the word that's missing is specialty. Right? If someone asked me on Twitter about Android, I would say, this is not my specialty. If I looked for the answer, I would just be Googling for it. So I would encourage them to go and Google for it as well. But that's not what I specialize in.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Alex, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yes. I think the session is a little too tense. I was going to ask your favorite ice cream, but I remembered you're diabetic, so I don't think I can ask that.
No ice cream here, sir.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Can I say that again?
What's your favorite, coffee or tea?
My favorite coffee or tea?
Yes. Okay.
McDonald's, Diet Coke, Coke Zero, Coke Pepsi Max. I drink mostly diet soda. My wife drinks tea, but I'm not a big tea drinker, I'm afraid, sir. I think it's just it's a weird cultural thing, you know. Americans like their Diet Coke breakfast.
Okay. And my last question, what's your favorite number?
My favorite number, 42.
Okay.
Oh, that is so exact.
You know why that is an important number?
Yeah.
I do not.
All right, I will show you, sir, and you will educate yourself.
Wow.
Okay.
So if anyone asks you what the answer is, you say it's 42. And we'll let you know what the question is another time.
Okay.
It's a good book, but it is the answer to everything.
Yes, I think
The
people
whole
should-
article is all about it. Like, look, like if you like all these, look at this. It's like YouTube channels all about the number 42 and why it's the 10 reasons 42 is the most important. So you're going to go down 5 reasons why 42 may actually be the first number. Like, it's a whole, what's so special about 42? Oh my God. Ah! Chaos. 42. Ah!
Wow.
I bet you didn't see that coming.
I didn't. And the last question now, are you a cat person or a dog person, or you generally don't like pets?
As long as they taste like chicken, I don't mind pets.
Okay.
So anyone else with a question before I go on with mine?
So I'm interested in the
Okay.
people who are not talking, the ones that are muted. I'm interested. They can. I can't see the chat. Only you can. But you people who are muted, what are you doing right now? Are you sitting? Is this like a radio show? Are you on a walk? Are you too shy to unmute? What's your story? Otherwise, I'm going to start calling people out by name.
We can start with Josh.
I'm going to start with Josh because I see him laughing.
Yeah.
Josh knows how to unmute. He's like, "Oh, my microphone doesn't work. I'm so sorry."
Yeah, it works. um,
Is any of
I
this
don't-
useful, Josh?
yeah, really useful. I really liked your answer on self-discipline. That was my question, and I guess that's one thing I'm waking up and starting doing tomorrow morning. That was really helpful.
I think it's also important to remember that discipline and willpower is a well. You have to fill it up. You take from it and you fill it up. You do not have an infinite amount of self-discipline. Don't get caught up. And again, I apologize to make stereotypes, but I think Kenyans are not good at this because there's a lot of hustle culture right now in Kenya. Oh man, you're not hustling hard enough. You got to work hard, man. You not get that hustle, right? Get that startup, right? Then you just set up a system where you feel bad about yourself because you're not hustling hard enough. Where do you think that energy is supposed to come from? Oh, you know, Josh, why you're not succeeding? Because you don't try hard enough. You don't care. If you cared, man, like that's bullshit. It's not how it works. Are you refilling your energy through visiting your family or going for walks or doing sports or whatever makes you happy? You fill up the well of discipline, of willpower, and then you pull from it like a bank account of discipline. So don't think tomorrow that you're not going to wake up re-energized and kick ass every single day for the next 365 days. I'll give you an example really quickly because I know you have another question. Go back to my blog. And I'll go to the dates. And I showed you like here's blogging in 2019, right? So it's pretty consistent, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you might go, oh wow, that's amazing. Hanselman's blogging every day. What a, he's a beast. January, February, March. Okay, let's look at this. May. Okay, look at this. Here we go. Here's March. Cool, good job. Here's April. May. What the hell is happening in June? Like, what do you think's happening here? What did I kind of lost my discipline, didn't I? Well, kind of the world is on fire, right? So here's the question. Do I beat myself up? I feel bad. I'm like, oh shit, excuse me for swearing. I didn't blog consistently in June, but I forgive myself. I'm not going to beat myself up about it. The world is changing, so I took a break. You know what I mean? I'm blogging half as much right now. I am refilling that well. I can't get up 3 hours early and try to fix that problem. So I'm giving myself permission to not do that. And that's okay. So rather than feeling like I failed or I fell off this wagon that I have to get back on, I said, the world kind of sucks right now. Things are bad. I'm going to just slow down a minute, refill, and then I will, when I have the energy again, I'll reattack. All right. Did you have something else you were going to add, sir?
Yeah. There's one thing I would really like to hear from you. There's one friend of mine who keeps telling me you need to watch a video by Scott about finite keystrokes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's one friend who keeps iterating on finite keystrokes almost
Clearly,
every day.
he's a good friend, of course. Did I do one of these in Kenya?
I think you did the video back in 2013, I think.
I think it was at Next Tech.
I think so. But if you
That may have
go on
been
YouTube,
one.
it's on scaling yourself as a developer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's two of them. Okay, so there's this. That's not it. This is the Next Tech Africa one. Oh, that was no, that's .NET. Blah blah blah. So there was two talks. Social developer. There it is. Okay, so this is one that we did. Radisson? Where were we? Okay, this was one, the social developer. Search for Hanselman, the social developer. And the other one is productivity tips. That's the one that talks about finite keystrokes. And if you search for Hanselman productivity tips and go to video, Hanselman productivity, maybe don't use Bing. That's probably the first thing. Yeah, These are all, I've done this talk many times. Any of these on information overload and productivity, I talk about this concept here. You have a limited number of keystrokes left in your hands before you die. Isn't that amazing? Let me show you something. If you go to keysleft.com, how old are you, Josh?
Ooh.
Don't know?
Be
22?
honest.
19?
Be honest.
Yeah,
48?
we rarely talk about our age in Kenya. We kinda.
All right.
No,
I decided-
Josh.
How fast
no.
do you type, Josh?
Pardon?
How fast
fast
do you
would-
type, sir?
I'm not sure. Not sure.
Okay, we'll just take whatever he says and subtract 20%. So we'll say 50, so you're 22 and you type 50 words a minute.
Yeah.
You have 195 million keystrokes left before you die.
Okay.
So those are the keystrokes. And I want to point out that the number is going down because you're not typing right now. Right? You have less time. So you should probably get going. Now, this is assuming you're going to live to be 90.
Yeah.
And you'll spend 4 hours a day at work typing with an average of 5 letters in a word in English. So this is the stuff that you can do with your keys if you went full speed between now and 90. So the question is, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to write cool computer programs and love letters, or are you going to email your boss? Yeah. So what you can do is use this as a mindfulness exercise. And when you type to someone, you're giving them the gift of your keystrokes. So if after this event, yeah, I see Homo Lemo just joined, my buddy Homo. So if he emails me and he says, "Hey, great talk, Scott, loving it. I have a question that you didn't answer." I'm not going to send him the gift of 2,000 of my keystrokes, right? I mean, he's cool, but we don't know him like, I don't know him like that. I'm like, I'll send him 2,000 keystrokes and he'll be like, cool. Dude, why did I slap the keyboard for 20 minutes to answer your question? But it was a really good question. Maybe what I'll do is I'll write a blog post about the question. Then I'll send him a link to the question. Because the next person that asks the same question, I just give them a link. And then you might say, well, no one reads my blog, only 3 people read my blog. That's 3 emails you didn't have to send. If you get 10 people to read your blog, there's 10 emails you didn't have to send. Every single time someone asks you a question, do not email them the answer. Put the answer anywhere with a URL. Medium, WordPress, whatever. Send them a link. Do that for 20 years, and you will be a medium popular blogger like me. Email is where keystrokes go to die.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for that. Let's see if I still have any questions. Oh, yeah, there's a question about social media. In your productivity talk, you still talk about how social media isn't like, no, I don't remember how you phrased it, but there's the urgent things, the important, then those things that seem urgent but are not really urgent and they're not really important. But you at the moment they're urgent, right? Like you think they're urgent, that you have to send that tweet, but they're not, right?
Yep.
So the question is,
go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead.
So the question is, I want to engage people on social media. I want to post what I'm doing, what I'm working on, but to also engage people, like to also reply to their messages, etc. So how can I do that without interfering with my normal work? Yes, that one.
Yeah. So the idea that she's talking about here is that there are things that are urgent like the house is on fire or someone's having a baby. And then there are things that are important, and something can be urgent and important, urgent and non-important. Like a phone call is urgent, right? Like they're bugging you. Like if my phone rang right now, there's a feeling of urgency. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to take this call. I'm very important. Excuse me. Hello. And it's someone trying to sell me something. That was fake importance. It felt urgent, but it was not important. Typically, social media is neither urgent nor important. There's really nothing that can ever happen on social media that matters, because someone will tell you if there was a real emergency, right? If the world was ending, you're probably not going to hear about it on Twitter. You probably hear about it because people will go screaming past your window, right? If the zombies come, you're not going to see it as a tweet. So then what do you use Twitter for, or social media for? You use it to feed your spirit, if it does, and you use it intentionally. You don't want to be coding and then have Twitter open. That's not a sprint. You have to focus on what you're doing, and then you do your little thing on your Twitter, and then you come back to your coding. So the way that I keep it from interfering with my life, Bethany, is I separate when I'm on Twitter from when I'm working, right? Sometimes people think that they can code with the television on. No, that's not how it works, right? Usain Bolt doesn't text while running fast. You either are running fast or you're running not so fast, right? There's certain kinds of multitasking that are a lie. You can't text and drive. Eventually you will die. So you can't use Twitter and work on projects at the same time. So then you separate those things and do them separately at different times.
So a follow-up on that. When you're coding, do you listen to music or do you enjoy silence?
I'm a silence person because I find that the words in the music take up space in my brain, and I can't think about words like the coding I need to type when, Nicki Minaj is saying other words in my head, and then I'll end up naming my variables after like Beyonce songs. So the words mix. The ones I'm trying to make mix with the ones that they're singing in the song. That's just me. Everybody's different. Again, if it feeds your spirit, if it works for you, that's great. But if I'm listening to something that's like a low-key bop and I'm like bopping to it and I'm trying to code, it slows me down. So when I'm really thinking, I have to have silence. And I look like Clinton. I sit here like this, thinking about whatever the thing I'm thinking about is.
Among my last questions, how do you now plan your day? Like, do you use just your calendar? Do you use tools like Notion? Do you use a notebook? How now do you schedule your day and everything?
That's my calendar.
Wow.
I use color. So anything that is orange is a presentation.
Yeah.
Anything that's red is a boss. Anything green is personal. There's last week. So the colors mean something to me. Like I know that green is personal, and I know that orange are presentations, and I know that red are bosses. Kind of like playing Tetris, except you use your calendar.
Interesting. It looks so colorful, like.
It looks full?
No, colorful. Like,
oh, it is
mine
colorful.
is all blue.
Yeah, it looks like somebody threw up on a monthly calendar. It's pretty bad.
Yeah. So, yeah. My last question is, oh no, I still have two more. How do you deal with analysis paralysis? Paralysis. How do you deal?
Analysis paralysis.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. That is still something I regularly have problems with. Analysis paralysis that Bethany just mentioned, if you're not familiar with the term, is when you allow your brain to get stuck so much when you're analyzing something that you do nothing. If you have an idea, you want it to be perfect. So then you let the perfect become the enemy of the good. What I usually try to do is I just slap the keyboard, meaning if I'm sitting there looking at an empty page and I'm paralyzed because I'm analyzing too much, just start typing. Even if it sucks, at least it's not doing nothing.
Yeah. So there's a question. I don't know if he wants to ask it himself. Shadrach. No. Let me just read what is written.
Hello. Yes, Bethany.
Oh, yeah. You can ask your question. There's so much background noise.
Yeah, that's why I did not want to ask over the microphone, but you can just read the.
Okay, let me ask you a question. So he's asking, how do you deal with frustrations that come your way? For example, if you want to begin doing something, but before you start, another thing comes up and ruins everything. You understood? So he's asking, how do you deal with frustrations that come your way? For instance, if you want to begin doing something, but then before you start, something else comes up, and then now you like chase that thing, then yeah.
It's a good question. The hardest thing to do is to know when to say no to something. And your biggest tool, your strongest tool, is to be able to say, no, I can't do that, or no, I'm not going to do this opportunity. You can't make more hours. So everything is a trade-off. So if someone at work says, hey, work on this new thing, it's going to take 3 more hours. Those hours have to come from somewhere. So do you eat less? Do you sleep less? Do you see your family less? I think being intentional, being focused and clear about what the trade-off is, being intellectually honest with yourself. Hey, there's a new opportunity at work. You can be a team lead. It's going to cost you 3 more hours a day. Sure, yes, cool. Where are you getting those 3 hours from? Are you going to see your family less? Are you going to watch less TV? Are you going to poop less? What's happening that's going to get those 3 hours? Like, something's got to happen, right? You can't willpower your way through that. You could also say no. So I try to get frustrated. I don't get frustrated, I get quiet. You saw when he asked that question, I was like, I think about that. I don't think we give ourselves permission to think. Like, you know, there's kind of 2 different kinds of people out there. You ask people a question and then they just start talking. You really think that they have to answer that fast? No, they're just filling their mouth up with words to give themselves time to get to the actual answer. If I'm interviewing someone and I ask them a question, hey, you can show me a bubble sort and write it in a whiteboard or whatever, and they go, oh yeah, no problem, I can do a bubble sort, blah, blah, blah. You don't know what you're doing. I would much rather have someone go like this. I'm going to think about that for a second. That was only like 3 seconds, but it was thinking. You know what I'm saying? Like, clear your mind and think and ask yourself, why is this thing happening? Who are the players, and how can I make a decision? So I don't get angry or frustrated. I just get quiet and I think. And I think people should give themselves permission to think more. I'm not sure if that's the answer that Shadrach wanted, but that's the one I have.
I think it answered his. Let's wait for his feedback.
We'll see what he says in the chat.
Yeah. The other question I have is, what do you what do you do at work? What does your work
What
entail?
exactly do you do here?
Yeah, because
no one knows what I do.
But not really, not 100%.
I manage community for the developer division. So I'll give you an example of some of the stuff that I do. So if you go to this URL here, .net/videos, I helped make 100 videos on C# and .NET Core and ASP.NET. These are all YouTube videos that are free videos teaching people how to do .NET. So here in this video, Leslie teaches me how to make a .NET website. So producing these, creating them, putting this system together, and then putting them on YouTube is a thing that my team did. And we made how to do Raspberry Pi and how to do Xamarin and how to do Apache and on and on and on. So that was one thing. I own the website when you go and download .NET. So when you go getting started and download and get C# on your computer, that's me. We're doing .NET Conf, which is a free conference, and we have one now that's called Focus on Microservices. And on this event is going to be in 13 days. So I help organize this event, pick the speakers, and we'll do like deep free training on how to build microservices with like people who know what they're doing. That's an online event, right? So community is all of these things and more. That's my day job.
Interesting. I actually thought what you're doing as part of community isn't part of your day job.
What do you mean? Like being on Twitter is not my day job.
I thought that no. Like doing the videos, it's just like you work on it, the background, then you're now coming.
Oh, that's a good. Okay, that's a good point. Thank you for pointing that out, Bethany. Okay.
Yeah.
So doing .NET stuff and Visual Studio stuff is part of my day job.
Yeah.
Doing my own personal YouTube is not my day job.
Oh.
So my podcast is my own, my blog is my own, and my YouTube is my own. That's all side hustle.
Yeah.
Right. So making videos, I just recently did this. I really like this series. You should check this out, called Computer Stuff They Didn't Teach You. And I just did 2 videos on Git 101 and Git pull requests. So if you want to learn about how Git works, I feel pretty good about these videos. That's not my day job. That was just something I did because I was bored. It was late. It was like done late at night. You can actually see, I'll skip the ad here. It was like super late at night and I was super bored. You can tell how dark it is. I'm like, yeah, let's talk about Git. So I just walk through Git with myself in picture. Yeah, that's not my day job. But I think that what am I doing here? Like, what's my job is a different question than what do I do? I think I'm a professor. So whether I'm doing work at Microsoft or doing YouTubes or blogs, it all feels like a teacher, doesn't it?
Yeah. So we have another question from Oliver on the chat. He's asking, have you worked on developing Xamarin?
Yeah, I've done some Xamarin stuff. There's actually a really good Xamarin app that James Montemagno did. James actually works for me. And he made an app called Hanselman Forms. And Hanselman Forms is it's the original Hanselman app. And basically it's a demo app that teaches you how to use use Xamarin by giving you an app that's like a social media app for just me. So it gives you like my Twitter and my blog and all the places that I am, and it runs on every device. So Hanselman Forms is like a super fun app, and he updates it regularly with the latest stuff. That's a good example, and it shows all the different tools that he did to like make Hanselman forms a thing.
That's amazing. So anyone with any last question before we end?
Yeah, I have one more question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember back then when I was in first year or second year in campus, I saw this cool IoT demo you did for diabetes. I'm just interested. I really love hardware, and just wanted to ask, how do you use technology like at home or in your day-to-day life, just solving some small problems with hardware around you? What are some of the cool stuff you do around you with hardware?
All right, let me think. I mean, like, so the demo, okay, well, the demo that he's referring to, probably this one.
Yeah, that's it.
I walk you through how my blood sugar management system works. Oh, that's bearded. Look at my lovely beard. So nice. And my hair, that's back when I had hair. So this is a Google for Scott Hanselman's best demo. Around the house, let me see, what do I got here? I got the robot. This is like just a Raspberry Pi with a radio and a camera. So it can like move the camera and drive around. That's one thing. I made a arcade game. It's clear, and there's a Raspberry Pi inside. That lets me play video games on the Raspberry Pi. I made another Raspberry Pi that's inside of a Game Boy case. So it's still a Raspberry Pi, but it's in a case, and you can play like Super Nintendo on it. That's cool. I've got mostly Raspberry Pi stuff. Oh, here's one. The Raspberry Pi Kubernetes cluster. So it's 6 Raspberry Pis stacked on top of each other and then networked, and it runs Kubernetes all at the same time. So then you can have like your own home cloud. It's your own personal cloud. That's one. Just like, I got a whole pile of crap here, honestly. It's just like a mess of stuff. Little stupid projects, little VR things. I got a bunch of junk over here. I 3D printed a Pokemon ball. Just because, you know, you have to have a Pokemon ball, right? I'm working on updating this Zune, because I think that the Zune is the best music player and no one respects it. So I'm working on fixing that. It's just fixing like whatever stupid things you have around the house. I've got this one thing I'm working on that will tell me when I left my garage open. It'll text me. Garage is locked. Yeah, a bunch of other crap over there, but it's all just little junk pieces of, you know, solving whatever problem you want to make the turn the water off outside, or to tell me if my kids didn't flush the toilet.
I don't know whether this would count, but at Build 2020, you had this, the session, your lights, you could control your lights based on your team's status.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let me show you that. Thanks for the reminder. Most of these things look expensive, but they're really not. Like a Raspberry Pi is pretty inexpensive once you find it. So I just keep reusing the same Pis. The light is also looks expensive, but it's not. So this light over here, I can change the color. And it's just the, what do you call it? It's like a $50 LED. They're just plastic LEDs that I taped to the wall. They're just taped up there with Velcro, you know, with like hooks and stuff. So then I can change that color, and I have an app, and then I can use a web API and change the color based on the color of my shirt, or maybe based on the color of Windows background. So it's kind of a mood light, you know. It's not super fancy, but it changes the vibe in the room, makes your place like a club. And then I've got it now where I can mix it up a little bit, go rainbow style. I think it was $50, but it makes me happy. I think we got to start wrapping up. I've got to go to my next meeting.
Yeah. There are like 2 questions. At what point do you start getting paid for making YouTube videos? Like, yeah.
That's a good question. YouTube videos don't make any money. Like, they just make you watch those ads. But I really haven't seen a lot of, I mean, I don't know. I think I get like $35 last month. Like, it's enough to pay for Raspberry Pis, but it's definitely not enough to buy a car, you know? Unless you have like 1 million people following you on YouTube, I found that it's kind of a waste of time. So I would definitely say that YouTube has not been a good solution for like extra money. The podcast does okay. The podcast makes me like $100, but that only pays for the hosting. So it's self-sustaining, you know? I can sell some ads and stuff. So I would say content creation doesn't make me really any money, but it's fun, and the content creation is like a resume. So someone was complimenting me about my trash resume, and I think the CV is not nice, but I don't need a CV because I have a blog, right? So if Alex sends me a CV and it says Google me, I'll be like, woo, okay. So I will Google him, and then I'll find his GitHub and his YouTube and his blog, and I'll be like, that's badass. Just a single piece of paper that says Google me, right? So, you know, I have enough stuff online where I could do that. So the value in the YouTube isn't the money; it's the ability to get the next job.
Okay. Then this other question, a follow-up on Xamarin. Is it developed with JetBrains Rider?
Sorry, say that again.
Is Xamarin, I don't know how this question is phrased, but is Xamarin developed with JetBrains Rider, or is
is Xamarin developed with JetBrains Rider? No, everything in Xamarin is developed in Visual Studio.
Okay.
But I'm sure you could develop it with Rider, but everything we do internally is done entirely in Visual Studio proper.
Cool. And now your parting shots. I know you wrote what you would want to say to your 20-year-old, but now what will you say to us? Your parting shots.
I think the most important thing is to think about what's called systems thinking. I'll give you a podcast to listen to. Here we go. My podcast number 484. So go to the Hanselman podcast 484. And Ishao Rogers is a CEO of a web company here in the US. And she talks about how everyone is teaching people how to code, and we need to teach people how to think. So I don't want you to get lost in syntax and keeping track of the little details of this language and that language. Instead, think more about the larger systems that are inside those, like the question at the very beginning about web APIs. It doesn't matter what language it's written in. There's going to be a new language tomorrow, right? When I started programming, JavaScript didn't exist. So there's some language that hasn't been made yet. So don't worry about the little details. Think about the big systems and familiarize yourself with like how cloud computing works. if someone says, should I learn Azure or should I learn AWS? It doesn't matter. Use whichever one gets you a job. Cloud computing concepts remain the same. All right, I have to go, my friends. Thank you for putting this together, Bethany.
Thank you so much for joining us. It was our pleasure.
Yeah.
Bye.
Cool. Follow me on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
And
All right,
subscribe
bye-bye, my
to the
friends.
YouTube channel
See ya.
as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will be ending the call here. Thank you. Thank you so much.